All right. Year 11 textbook. I've already put it onto OneNote. It'll take a while to sink in. But here we go, 8.2. So these are the notes that you guys should have at the moment. Let's go through just the key couple of ideas. Percent. Per means every. Fill that in. Cent means century or 100. So every time you say percent, it actually just means for every 100. So together, it means every 100. So for example, if we said 45% in human language, that simply just means 45 for every 100. So it's 45 out of 100. When you say 5/8%, that actually just means 5/8 out of 100. When they say 25.25%, it also still means the same thing. It's 25.25 out of 100. And even if they said 0.75%, it actually just means 0.75 out of 100. And because they're all out of 100, that language in mathematics on your calculator, this just means divide 100. This means divide 100. So on the bottom here, when I say just divide them all by, fill it in. Divide them all by 100. Okay. So what is this helping you to do? This is converting percentages into decimals. Or if you were to do it fractions by hand, you can actually work it out by hand by just simply dividing by 100. But for your purposes, I would say just learn to do it on a calculator. Get into decimals first. Okay. Obviously, if it's the opposite, if you're converting percentages to decimals, you divide. But if you want to convert decimals to percentages, last lesson we said you multiply by 100. So for example, if I asked you to change 0.7 as a decimal into a percentage, you need 100 of them because it says every 100. So if you need 100 of them, times by 100. On your calculator, if you times 0.7 by 100, you will get 70, but don't forget to put the percent symbol. Okay. And so my previous, in that video 3.2, it kind of covers this bit too. So the year 12s do it as well. You guys do it a bit more in detail. So copy those details down. Every time there's that percent symbol, it just means out of 100, out of 100, out of 100. Out of 100 just means divide by 100. Let's do some examples. Say they ask you to convert 0.51 to a percentage. So in this case, you're moving decimals to percentage. If you want to convert decimals to percentage, what do you do here? Let's go with Michael. How do I convert 0.51 to a percentage? What do you have to do? There's only one technique. Close. That's only the other way around. So percentages to decimals, you divide by 100 times by 100. Good. So every time you want a percentage, you need 100 of them. 0.51 times 100. Let's do it on a calculator. Here we go. 0.51. So 0.51 times 100. And we get 51. Don't just write 51. What are you meant to write? 51%. Because you're converting to percentages. Without that symbol, it will be incorrect. So you got 51%. Next one, same thing with 2 over 5. That's a fraction now. If you want to convert that to a percentage, same thing. How do I convert 2 out of 5, Kate, into a percentage? What do I do? Times by 100. That's it. Anytime you want a percentage, you need 100 of them. So times by 100. On your calculator, you don't have to do this one by hand. 2/5 times 100. You do it on your calculator. 2 over 5 means 2. Divide 5. And then times 100. So 2 out of 5 just means 2 divide 5. So on your calculator, you type in 2 divide 5 and then times 100. Here we go. 2 divide 5 times 100. And I get 40. Don't forget, it's not just 40, it's 40. What am I missing, Archie? I don't just write the answers 40. I'll write 40%. Very good. Make sure to put in the symbol. Okay. Make sure to fill these in too. So we've converted decimals to percentages and fractions to percentages. And in both cases, I just times by 100. Yeah? If it's the other way, you divide by 100. Now, when they say finding the percentage of an amount, so say you went to DFO, a top that you like is now selling at $120, but they say that it's going to be 35% off. So you need to figure out what 35% is. So how do you find 35% of 120? Write this in. 35% means 35 out of 100.
This one? Oh, for them again? Because I don't have any idea.
What do you mean? Oh, needed to be color. Yeah. Yes. It should be recording now. Let's double check. Yes, it is. All right. How do you find 35% of 120? 35% means 35 out of 100. Of, that actually means times, and then 120. So on your calculator, you'll be typing 35 divided by 100 times by 120. That's what it means. So when you want to find 35% of a certain number or percentage of a certain number, you literally take the number divided by 100 and then times by the value. So the value is 120. Let's do this on a calculator, see what it turns out to be. So 35 divided by 100 times by 120, which is the value of the top you want to buy, and that tells you 42. So if they told you that you get a 35% of that t-shirt or top that you want to buy, if it was $120, you're now reducing it by $42 because they're taking off 35%, which means taking off $42. Okay? And so the percentage increase, decrease, that won't be until the next exercises, but that gives you a hint of how to do it. Okay, so how do you find a percentage of a value? Literally writing what I just wrote there. Okay. Flip over the page. So hopefully now you've got these notes here. If you don't, look on OneNote because I'm going to be checking that you've wrote these notes down before you leave. All right, here we go. Flip over the page. Example 3. Okay, so this case here, 60% of Year 11 students said mathematics is hard. If there are 165 students in Year 11, calculate to the nearest person how many students claim that mathematics is hard. Okay, so how many students said mathematics is hard? 60% of Year 11 students. How many Year 11 students are there? There's 165 students. So what you're asking is, what is 60% of 165? Because you know that 60% of them find it hard. So what's 60% of 165? Same thing again. Let's see if you remember the notes from just now. What do I do here? What am I going to type on the calculator? So let's break it apart. Let's go with, who am I chosen? Let's go Estella. What do I write here? 60%. What is that? The same thing as writing out of 100. So 60 over 100. What does of mean? Let's go with Georgia. The word of. Good. Times by 165. Okay. You guys, thank you. So you got 60% of 165. It just means 60 out of 100 times 165. How do you calculate on your calculator? 60 divide 100 times 165. Do that on your calculator. See what we get. Here we go. 60 divide 100 times 165. That gives us 99. Well, that's a nice number. So what's the answer? Even though it said calculate to the nearest person, it looks like the nearest person is 99. out of curiosity, what if the answer ended up being 98.3? In an exam, be careful with this one. If it says 98.3 on your calculator and they say calculate to the nearest person, what would you write your answer be? 98.3 to the nearest person? Yeah. Some students will write 98 because it's closer to 98. In the exam, they'll say that 0.3, you can't have 9.3 of a person. So the next nearest number should actually be 99. So just be careful of that. Okay, so if the answer was, even though it's a 0.3, I know it's closer to 98, but in the exam, realistically, closest nearest person is you need 99 because 98 was just exactly 98 already. Now you've got 0.3 of a person, you have to round up. Okay, that's only for the end of year exam, for year 12. For you guys, that probably doesn't happen as often, but just especially for methods and specialist students, that's one of the key things that they would penalize on. So even though 0.3 is really close to 98 because you're counting in terms of people, so narrow, rounding it to the nearest person, 0.3 person is closest to one person. Okay, you can't have a third of a person. Okay, so the answer should be 99, not 98. All right, team. Last bit. All of these is only, you don't need to know this per se, but it's nice to know. So, unitary method, this is when you're out shopping and you don't have a calculator and you want to do a quick maths kind of thing. For those who don't realize, 10% of 50, 10% is the same thing as saying 10 out of 100. But for those who know their fractions, 10 out of 100 is 1/10. And so the language, when you say 10% of anything, is actually the same thing as saying divide 10. Okay, so if I told you that your top was $50, girls, thank you. If I said the top was $50 and we said, what's 10% of that? You literally just divide it by 10. So think about it. What's 50 divided by 10? What's 50 divided by 10? Let's go with Michael. 50 divided by 10 is equal to 5. So when we say 10% of 50, it's actually just 5. So for every one of them, you can actually just divide by 10. So if you walked into a store, they said 10% off the shoes, and the shoes are 120, just divide that by 10. So, for example, if the shoes was 120, 10% of 120, so let's work it out. 120 divided by 10 is equal to what? Let's go with Ishara. What's 120 divided by 10? How many 10s fit into 120? 12. Very good. And so when you say 10% of 120, it's actually equal to 12. That's all it is. 10% is the easiest way to calculate. That's why it's called a unitary method, because you can do 10%. But if you can do 10%, you can do 30%, because just 3 of them. You can do 15% because it's 10% plus half of 10. That's why 10% is a special number, because all you have to do is just divide by 10. So here we go. If I asked you how to find 30% of 50, you can do that in your head by first calculating what's 10% of 50. But 10% just means divide by 10. Michael told us before 10% of 50 is 5. So that's for 10%. So if you had 30%, that's 3 times as much. So if 30% is 3 times as much as 10%, and 10% equals $5, how much is 30%? $15. Very good. It's just 3 times the amount. So 30% must equal to 15. That's why it's called a unitary method. So as long as you know how to do 10, 10 is really nice. You can make it into 1% by dividing by 10. You can make 10% back to 5 by halving it. You can double it to get 20. You can triple it to get 30. You can times by 10 to get 100%. That's why the 10% will help you solve these ones. So if you wanted to do this one, same thing again. 15%, you can split it up into 10% and 5%. 10% of 40 is easy. What's 10% of 40? Can I please have? Let's go with Archie. How do we quickly find 10% of 40? It's 4. Very good. So 10% is 4, but 5% is half of 10. So that means 5% is half of 4. And what's half of 4? 2. So that means this must be 2. So together, if I asked you, what is 15% of 40? You don't need a calculator for that. You can quickly do it in your head and say, oh yeah, it's 4 plus 2, 6. So if someone said, oh yeah, I'll take 15% off your $40 shoes, then you're like, oh cool, that's roughly $6 off. It's quick maths. Yeah? 21% is the same thing. Looks hard, but it's not. That's just 10% with another 10% with 1%. 1% of 60, let's see. Oh, sorry, 10% of 60. 10% of 60 just means 60 divided by 10 gives you $6. So another 10% gives you another $6. So that's 20% there. How do you get 1%? How do we get 1%? If you know 10% is 6, how do I get 1%? What would you do here? No, I just want to know 1%. So you know 10% is $6. 10% of 60 is $6. So that's 20 already. That's 20%. I just want to know, how do you find 1% if you know 10%? Divide by 10. Very good. Because 10%, if you divide that by 10, you get 1%. So the question is, how do you do $6 divided by 10? Anyone know what $6 divided by 10 equals? Convert it to cents if it helps you. $6 is 600 cents. So 600 cents divided by 10 gives you 60 cents. Okay, so as a rough mathematics, usually when you go shopping, no one says 21%, but I'm clearly testing you to see if you can use that unitary method. So together it should be 6 plus 6 plus 60 cents. $12.60 is how much 21% of 60 is. Okay, so hopefully you took something out of today's lesson. Unitary method is just a quick 10%er. I'll leave that there. That's your quick notes, and you can try 32% of 20 in your head if you want to. Have a go with that, but that's all for today's lesson. Okay? Thank you, team. We'll stop there.